Hi everyone, I'm Manisha, the founder of Modulo, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, homeschooling co-ops. Homeschooling co-ops were one of the things that first got me interested in homeschooling way back when I was working as a teacher in New York City, and they're very dear to my heart. To me, homeschooling co-ops really embody the essence of what makes homeschooling wonderful, which is a community of people united around a shared value of education, raising children together. So, what you might be asking is a homeschool co-op. It's not an official term, it's not a legal status. Homeschooling co-ops can take many different forms, ranging from a group of parents who casually meet 1 to 3 hours a week together and hang out with their kids, to a full-blown teacher who's running more of a micro school where kids can attend 1 or 2 or 3 days a week and parents drop off the children. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of maybe different types of homeschooling co-ops you might find, and then also how to find or even start one in your area. So the first example I talked about was kind of a more informal group. One of the great examples of this is the Hugs SF Unschooling group. They meet 3 hours a week on a Tuesday morning, and each of the parents has a shift 1 day every 2 months where they lead the session, and it's usually about 3 months around a certain project that the parents might decide the kids want to work on together. That's usually an hour or an hour and a half, and then the rest is more playtime, free time. Parents usually swap houses, but it's not every week. Usually they'll stay in one house for a longer period of time. So that's a really great example of something completely free, easy, and that's just a nice opportunity for kids to hang out and have community and learn while they're doing it. Another example of a homeschool co-op is a place like Brooklyn Apple Academy in New York City. And what they do is they have a lovely second floor apartment that has a wood shop that they've created and a kitchen. And children can come 1 day or 2 days or even 3 days a week. And typically how it works is they'll spend the morning, kids will write out what types of projects they want to work on. There might be a math lesson, and in the afternoon, often they have certain projects or outside teachers that come in. Like, for example, if all of the kids decide that they want to learn Japanese printmaking, the homeschool co-op might bring someone in to teach that subject. So it's a little bit more teacher organized, but with a lot of parent input involved in that process. Another example of a place like that is Teacher Tom's Preschool Co-op in Oregon. There they have one teacher and tons of kids. And the way they make that program more affordable is that the parents come in as assistants. And what's really most effective, and they volunteer, and that helps reduce the cost of tuition. It's always important to look at what the local laws are in your area if you want to start something like this. Sometimes they're a little bit confusing, but as homeschooling has grown, the laws have become a lot clearer. So typically what you're going to want to look at is, what does the Department of Health say for gathering children under the age of 5? It's usually under a certain number of hours a day. Otherwise, you have to declare a formal preschool. And then for over age 6, you're going to look at homeschool law. So either the child needs to be registered as a homeschooler, or this homeschool co-op needs to be registered as some type of entity like a private school, in which case they need to take attendance, and then the child is no longer homeschooling. And then another thing that sometimes can make a difference in different states is if it's multi-subject or one subject, because often it's a little bit easier if you're teaching like a French class or a gymnastics class than if you have more of an exploratory environment that has different subjects. I did want to touch on one really fun thing that Brooklyn Apple does, and that you can also organize in your community, is that they have what's called a field trip day. So every Wednesday, I believe, they go to a different spot in New York City, like the Museum of Natural History, or they might even go to a business like the Google headquarters or a smaller print shop or something like that. And it's just a really fantastic way for kids to experience the city, experiential learning. We did that at one point in San Francisco as well, where we were taking kids to a different museum each week, and it was really a lot of fun, very affordable, and a great chance for the parents to have a little break if they wanted to do work or to come along. So just to talk a little bit more about different types of homeschool co-ops. So as I mentioned, we have the very informal Hugs SF version, which is totally parent-led, totally free. You're just swapping out teachers, different parents volunteering, and then you have the much, you still pretty informal, but one that's led by a teacher where kids can sign up 1 or 2 days a week, and it serves that drop-off function. I will say one great thing about Brooklyn Apple is they still do have a lot of community events like dinners, potlucks, park days, and so that really helps encourage the family involvement in education. And then you have the teacher Tom model where you have a core teacher and then the parents are working as volunteers and assistants and saving money that way. There's also some co-ops which are kind of incredible that are all parent-led up to maybe even 5 days a week, but that does take a lot of coordination among volunteers, and it can, unfortunately, sometimes all of the burden can fall upon one parent who's doing the organizing for free, whereas other parents aren't really honoring their commitments of showing up. I'm just trying to give you a realistic picture here of what that can look like. Another example of a great model is somewhere like Cultural Roots Homeschool Co-op in Richmond, Virginia, Village Home in Oregon. There's also Different Directions in New York City, and these are homeschool cooperatives that offer classes. So rather than going 1 day or 2 days a week, it's almost like attending college where you have this campus and then you can choose really interesting offerings. Sometimes parents will request a specific offering like physics, or maybe kids will want a Minecraft club, and then they'll go out and find a teacher to offer that subject. And then other times it's things that the school has had or the homeschool co-op has had an idea for, like a belly dancing class. Ideally, the kids themselves are involved in thinking about what kind of classes they want to see offered there, but that's a really fun model. And then sometimes these spaces also function as co-working or co-learning spaces where if kids aren't taking a class, they can come and study. Some places have even set up science labs, so that is really fun as well. Now, if you're just starting out looking for a homeschool co-op, you are going to probably find a lot of options if you live in a big city like New York City, even Minneapolis, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Really, all you have to do is go on your local meetup group or just Google local homeschool group, contact the coordinator, say, hey, what types of homeschool co-ops are available in my area? You're often not going to see these very well advertised because, of course, they're more smaller, informal environments. People aren't putting up big Yelp pages, and also, homeschoolers are kind of sensitive. They don't want people judging them, so they're not really looking to advertise to a bunch of people who are not going to be very nice to them. And so it does take a little bit digging, but honestly, if you look for local online groups in your area, if you go on Facebook or Meetup and you just search for homeschooling group, join the group, say, hey, are there any co-ops? Or you can even just search in the group directly. There's usually a search function in each of the Facebook groups to look for the word co-op, then that's usually a great place to start. Now, if you live in a smaller area, or perhaps you're in an area where you feel a little bit at odds philosophically, religiously, politically with the people around you, it might be a little bit more difficult to find a homeschool co-op. Now, a lot of the homeschool co-ops in smaller areas are created by churches, and if you're not religious, you might not feel comfortable attending one of those co-ops. However, I would say some of them are still very open to outsiders, and if you're just open and upfront with them that you have different beliefs than them, often they will be very welcoming. If not, you can certainly start your own co-op. And this is how I would recommend starting your own co-op. First of all, I would just say you're going to want to start with a big group like C homeschoolers, secular eclectic academic homeschoolers, and try to find people who are in your area and might know about a co-op. So you could just introduce yourself and say, hey, we're a family in, let's say, Boise, Idaho is the first place that came to my mind. That's pretty big, so there probably are co-ops there, but is there anyone else in our area or anyone who can recommend a co-op going on? And typically another parent will reach out or you'll find something in the area. Now, okay, so if you want to start your own, I would say start simple. So probably the best thing to do is just introduce yourself to the group and say, hey, we're looking for some other homeschoolers that can meet up once a week for a co-op. And the thing about these homeschool co-ops is that it is very appealing as an idea to collaborate with tons of other parents and seeing what exactly do people want. But unfortunately, that can kind of devolve into just endless meetings and fighting about whether we want to focus on hiring an astronomy teacher or an ornithology teacher. So what I would recommend you do is think about, what do you want? Maybe let's say, okay, as an example, let's say you are a professional online tutor and you just want a day of the week where you can do your online tutoring sessions in peace without interruption from your kids. Or let's say 3 hours. Or let's say you're a writer and you want some time to write. Maybe you feel like, you know what, I don't really need someone to do the childcare piece. I just want the kids to be kind of engaged so that I can focus on my writing. So maybe that you find a space like a cafe or a park where you feel like you can focus and write, and you say like, hey, I want to get a little bit of work done. Would anyone else be interested in hiring a teacher in said park so we can kind of get some work done while our kids play? And here's another example. Maybe you are developing a new homeschooling curriculum and you want 3 hours a week that you can go to the library while your child is relatively entertained. Maybe you go and say, hey, I'm looking for 3 hours a week to myself. Is there a family who might want to swap with me? Your kids come out to my house and hang out with my kids once a week, and my kids go out and hang out with your kids once a week. And you're probably going to find a person. If you can start your co-op with just one other person, that's fantastic. Now, maybe you want to do something a little bit more involved, like a field trip day. So in that case, you'd say, hey, I want my kid to be involved in some type of field trip day. I want it to be drop off so I can use that day to get some work done. Would anyone else be interested in hiring a teacher and putting this group together? And then you'll probably get a bunch of parents who are interested, and then you can hire a teacher and you're good to go. And so maybe I kind of describe this in a way that sounds overly simplistic, but it really isn't that difficult to get something simple going. And the more you start simple in the beginning, the more it can grow. And, honestly, if you are looking to start a homeschool co-op, I would just start by thinking, like, what are your goals here? Is it you don't feel like you have expertise in the area and you want someone outside to help your kid? You just need a few days to work. You want them outside of the house. Or maybe you need a few days to work, but it's okay if they're in the house as long as they're engaged with other children. So try to think about kind of what your needs are and then work around that, and then present the idea to the rest of the community. Because the more clear you are on your idea, the more you are to get like-minded people to join you. So that's just a very, very kind of general overview of how to start a homeschool co-op. As I said, there's very different levels of this, ranging from a meetup in the park where the families are kind of working on their own projects around the periphery and it's more community oriented, to a full-blown, this feels almost like a tiny school type of environment. And so you can kind of think about what works best for you. And the only caveat I would say is that if you feel like you need an outside teacher to teach your kids and that you're not capable of that, I would really rethink that idea, because right now there's just so many resources that have been built specifically for homeschooling families to guide their children's education. And not just homeschooling families, any childcare provider. There's a script, there are people there to support you. I'm thinking of tools like Right Start Math, which have people on customer service on call. They have a script for you to teach your child math. Anybody can do that. To a tool like Brain Pop, which is basically an app, open and go, kids can learn anything. So if you're doing this for the academics, I would really rethink that. But if you're looking for more of a collaborative learning environment, if you're looking for community, homeschooling co-ops can be absolutely wonderful. Don't feel weird starting with 2 kids, 3 kids. If you want help finding a teacher, Modulo can absolutely support you with that. It's also not too difficult to find someone who would be interested in making a little extra money, who's a homeschooling parent, again, in one of those online groups. Or you can go on a big job site like Indeed and post an ad. And then you can just kind of go from there. And, if your goal is really just to start building a little bit community, have a few more friends for your child, I would say another really great option is to simply start a game night at your house. Again, go to your local online group, say, hey, once a week at my house or at the library, we're going to be playing board games. Bring your own board game. That's just such a wonderful way for kids to get together and interact without the pressure of what are we supposed to do right now? And the parents can engage, or they can, again, work in the periphery. If you're a library, that's a great place where you can kind of be getting your work done while your kids are playing the board games. Board games are great because if children are introverted, they don't have to talk a lot. They can be involved in playing the game. And if kids are really extroverted, they can also be engaged in a way that feels good for them. And same with the parents. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with today is we do have a very extensive blog about how to find or start a homeschool co-op. It's on our Substack at teacherkids.substack.com. And we go through everything from how to find a teacher to how to connect with other friends in your community. I even have screenshots in this post about exactly what to post on Indeed if you're looking for a teacher, how to find a teacher on LinkedIn. So it's really quite a detailed guide with all of the questions that you could ever want to know about a homeschool co-op. Not to repeat myself over and over and over again, but I just want to say, before, there's such a temptation when you start homeschooling to recreate school. So before you get involved in a homeschool co-op in any way, just really try to think about, why am I joining this homeschool co-op? Is it for my kids to make friends with other kids their age? In that case, do they need to have friends their age? Is that something that they want? Maybe they'd be doing great with a multi-generational community, or maybe they just need an internship, or maybe they just need one friend. If your goal is academics, why don't you feel confident teaching these skills? Could a childcare provider do it? Could it be two kids and one teacher? So just, and then in terms of childcare, there's also a lot of different options. There's swapping with one family. It doesn't have to be a group of 10 kids. And so those are just kind of all things I really encourage you to think about before you just jump into the homeschool co-op mix. So as I said, we have this very detailed article about how to find and start homeschool co-ops. We talk about types of homeschooling programs, where to find them, how to start homeschool programs, and I'm just going to take you through this. I'll leave this link in the comments. But when you're starting the homeschool program, you can find a curriculum. We have a guide to finding curriculum. You can be the teacher or find a teacher. It can be a good way to make money. You can host at your house or in person. You could even host online. And then there's just some instructions here about how to connect with other people in your community. And, maybe you're going to read this article and you're going to feel ready to go, or maybe you still have a lot of questions about how to connect with people and you're feeling uncertain. Then I would just say, whatever you do, we are here for you. So if you have questions, put them in the comments. If you've had a great experience with a homeschool co-op, put your comments there. If you have a homeschool co-op that you want to share with other people in the community, then do that. And if you want to read more about just starting a homeschool co-op, what a homeschool co-op is, going into more details on that, as I said, we have this very, very detailed article about how to find and start homeschool co-ops, including exactly what to write in your job posting, how to do cold outreach on Indeed and find an amazing leader, and that should really help you with all of that. And then last but not least, on Modulo, we do have an AI learning concierge. You can ask questions about any detail about how to start a homeschool co-op. We can't give legal advice, but we can give you some orientation into laws in your area, and anything you need, we are absolutely here for you on Modulo. So I wish you the very best of luck in thinking about what you want out of a homeschool co-op, in connecting with amazing families in a community, sharing childcare, sharing education, sharing skills. There is really nothing more incredible than educational community, and I really am excited for you to find those people who will raise your kids with you. And I'm sure you have a lot to bring to their kids as well. So please ask all of your questions. Don't feel overwhelmed. We are 100% here for you. No comment, no question goes unanswered. And I hope this video has been a helpful intro into how to start and find and think about homeschool co-ops.